The shadow that bred them can only mock. It cannot make. Not real new things of its own. I don't think it gave life to the orcs. It only ruined them and twisted them. And if they are to live at all, they have to live like other living creatures. Frodo from The Return of the King novel. A heated and I believe a misunderstood topic of late due to the Rings of Power show is that of the orcs and how they were created. In the second season of the Rings of Power show, we come across an orc family. This has sparked many people to call out the showrunners for going against Tolkien's writings. But what exactly did Tolkien write in his novels and other writings? Well, that's exactly what I want to go over in this video. One thing we have to understand is that Tolkien changed his idea on the orcs and their creation over his writings as time went on. There are different versions on how the orcs came to be, and we have to take this into consideration that if Tolkien never truly came up with a set-in-stone idea, then we have to approach all of this as such. In some of Tolkien's earliest writings, such as the first writings in the Book of Lost Tales from 1917 to 1920, talks about how Melkor or Morgoth created the orcs or goblins from the earth, stating, "For all that race were bred by Melkor of the subterranean heat and slime. Their hearts were of granite and their bodies deformed." Later in the 1930s, Tolkien kept the same idea in his writings. In his third chapter of The Shaping of Middle-earth, the fourth book in the series The History of Middle-earth. This was the early versions of what would later become the Silmarillion. Tolkien wrote that Morgoth created the orcs and Udama before the awakening of the elves, stating the hordes of the orc he made of stone, but their hearts of hatred. Later this is changed to happen in Angband after the stilling of the Silmarils by Morgoth. Later in 1937, in a later development of the Silmarillion, Tolkien changed their creation to after the destruction of the two lamps, stating, "Yet the orcs were not made until he had looked upon the elves, and he made them in mockery of the children of Iluvatar. The orcs were still made from stone, but when they were created was changed." Now in the third chapter of the Silmarillion, things were changed because Morgoth was unable to create life, but only able to corrupt it. But of those hapless who were snared by Melkor, little is known of certainty. Yet this is held true by the wise of Arisia, that all those of the Quendi that came into the hands of Melkor, ere Udama was broken, were put there in prison, and by slow arts of cruelty and wickedness were corrupted and enslaved. Thus did Melkor breed the hideous rake of the Orcor, in envy and mockery of the Eldar, of whom they were afterwards the bitterest foes. For the Orcor had life and multiplied after the manner of the children of Iluvatar, and not that had life of its own. This may be the vilest deed of Melkor, and the most hateful to Eru. Now later in his life in 1959, Tolkien changed things up in the appendix to Quendi and Eldar, but this too more related to the creation of larger orc men than the origin of orcs. Finally, there is a cogent point, though horrible to relate. It became clear in time that undoubted men could, under the domination of Morgoth or his agents, in a few generations be reduced almost to orc level of mind and habits. And then they would or could be made to mate with orcs, producing new breeds, often larger and more cunning. There is no doubt that long afterwards, in the Third Age, Saruman rediscovered this or learned of it in lore, and his lust for mastery committed as his wickedest deed, the inbreeding of orcs and men, producing both men-orcs large and cunning, and orc-men treacherous and vile. Even if this is more of creating a new, larger breed of orcs, we do get the same similar idea in the unfinished account of Drúdain that Tolkien was writing in his final years. He wrote that the Eldar answered, "Doubtless Morgoth, since he can make no living things, bred orcs from various kinds of men. But the Drúdain must have escaped his shadow, for their laughter and the laughter of orcs are as different as the light of Aman from the darkness of Angband." So what we have over time is a few different ideas that Tolkien had in the origin of orcs. First, they were made from stone with hearts of hatred, and later made in mockery of the children of Iluvatar. Later, they were corrupted elves that had been captured by Melkor, but multiplied after the manner of the children of Iluvatar, which seems to be what they are going with the Rings of Power with the family of orcs. Then in Tolkien's later life, orcs were bred and created from men. So what exactly are the origins of the orcs? It seemed like Tolkien never came to a final set-in-stone conclusion. Since Tolkien couldn't make a final decision, why can't we use them all as the origins of orcs as a possibility? And this is the way that I seem to look at it. First, Melkor created the orcs from stone, but he would have to keep creating each and every orc. Later, after he captured elves, he used his dark powers to corrupt them into orcs, which allowed them to multiply in the manner of the children of Ilúvatar. At some point, Melkor did the same thing with men, like in Tolkien's final writings. This approach that I take on the origin of orcs, and maybe it is a possible option for you as well, especially since Tolkien was unable to find an exact origin of how he wanted the orcs to be created, since he changed it over and over again in his writings. So hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to talking to you all in that next video. And comment down below and let me know what you think is the true and final solution to the origin of orcs from all these different ones that Tolkien put in his writings.